Welcome back to the Average White Guys. My name's Alex Haynes, one of the owners of A Squared. We're a marketing consulting firm, and I'm here with the illustrious, good-looking, handsome Justin. Say hi, Justin.
Hi, audience. I'm Justin with LLW Properties and Community Real Estate Services.
Excellent. And I am beyond excited to talk to you today about what?
The Atomic Habit, the book.
The book, Atomic Habits. I am super excited because the funny thing is, in all these things, right? My dad, who I've talked about in other episodes, right, has always been on me about taking nuggets away from every situation. Gold nuggets of knowledge, right? And he would say there's two types of nuggets of things not to do, learn from other people's mistakes, and nuggets of things to do. And I think this book, because we had a little discussion beforehand, is not just a nugget. I think it's a treasure chest of gold nuggets for us to take away and apply to our personal lives and as business owners take us to that next level. So I want to hear a little about your story, how this book's impacted you, and then get into the book so our viewers can understand what this book is all about.
So, we all live off of habits, whether it's how we wake up in the morning, how we drive to work, how we eat. Our life is designed around habits. That's why I love this book. And then we also, not only do we have our good habits, we have our bad habits. And naturally, it defines us who we are. And I think, again, that's why I've enjoyed this book so much. And what it really does is it gets into the smallest little minute things of how you can change your habits. So one of the things that stood out for me, if remember when we were making up resolutions, New Year's resolutions. I remember when I think it was 10, 12 years old, I had a list. I can even picture this. I was in my room. I had a list. I was bored that night because at 12, you can't go and do anything for New Year's anyways. I made a list of 25 different things that I was going to do, and I'm going to start them, and I'm going to do them every morning. And I think within 2 days, it's gone, right? That type of thing. Nobody likes the New Year's resolutions. But it's a good point because of the fact of we come up with these big ambitions that we want to do. And the problem is how are we going to attack them? And that's what this book brings you into, breaking it down into the small little 1% so you can attack it and get to those habits. Now, some of the things we've been dealing with in our company is some different changes moving on. I have an employee that's going to be retiring. What was supposed to be in 5 years is now going to be in 2 months. Big impact. I have an employee that unfortunately is dealing with a health issue with cancer that she was just diagnosed with. So we're all pitching in to make sure that she's comfortable in dealing with that situation as well. Then we just started some new software. We started a new phone system. And now, how are we going to make this work? What we were doing in the past is not going to work. What we need to do now is find out what those small habits are that are going to make us grow, learn a new way, and attack these situations that we're dealing with right now. So that is why I love the book, The Atomic Habits. It gives me that blueprint, like we talked about before, and a guidance on how we're going to change.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. And I'm really excited because I think there's a lot of people who could benefit from this blueprint, as we said, no matter what your personality type is. And so let's get into this book. Let's start, just so our audience knows real clearly, the title and the author of this book.
The Atomic Habit is the book. The author is James Clear.
Excellent. And real quick for our audience, can you just summarize overall before we get into the main points of what the book is about?
I mentioned a little bit ago, but it's that 1%. It's that very minute change that you can make that you really don't think of. It's breaking down a habit into the least common denominator of how to make the change in what you're trying to accomplish.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm excited to break that down later into actual points because I think that's really, really important. Now, I've done a little research, know a little bit about atomic habits, but there's like 4 or 5 main things he talks about. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What is the first one?
Q.
And what is the Q?
Basically, what are you trying to accomplish? That's mainly what this is. It's what is the trigger that initiates why you're wanting to make this change. And you need to figure that out. And that's with any habit, that's with any change in your life. What is the outcome that you're looking for? And from there, you can go backwards from it.
So the first thing you got to do in this blueprint is figure out your Q.
Yes.
What would be the second thing?
The craving. Why is the desire to do this? A lot of people health sometimes, right? You either get a health scare, you just want to be maybe go run that first 5K, something like that. What is that craving that you are trying to desire to make that cue come into place?
That is really interesting. Now, what does that lead us to with the next step? Because there's a couple different steps. What's that next step after craving? So we have cue, craving, then what?
You have the response. This is the actual behavior or the action. What are you now doing to make this go into effect?
Now, this is what we're actually modifying and changing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. And then lastly, what's the last thing he talks about as one of the main points?
What anybody wants out of a change, and that's the reward.
Reward.
What is the reward? How are you getting there? Do you actually have an actual reward? So I've made this habit continual. Is the end result just the reward, or are you actually even having little rewards along the way? Anything in that aspect of what is this end result and how can I help myself get there?
So just for our audience, I want to go over it real quick and correct me if I'm wrong. Please jump in. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Yes.
Right. So our cue, once again, is the trigger. The craving is what are you wanting to change? The response is the actual habit we're changing. And then lastly, it's the reward. What is that final result? Is that
That is
that
correct.
all correct?
Yep.
That is a lot to kind of unpack. Now, how is this used to actually create habits? Because we have the blueprint, but what in practice, how does this look like?
Okay, so let's give an example. I think a lot of we are dealing with hopefully business owners in this, or just life in general of trying to create this new habit. And I think what a lot of people try and do is they want to wake up earlier. I hear that all the time. I'd love to wake up earlier. And so now you need to look into that. So that's the cue, right? That's what you want to work on. Then you're going to go into the craving. How am I going to do this? What are the components of making this into fruition? And so what you can do on this is some people go, okay, I'm going to set my alarm so I can wake up earlier. I'm going to put things out in so I'm ready to go. Like if I want to go running in the morning because I want to wake up earlier, I'm going to put my shoes on. I'm going to sleep in my clothes or my running clothes or something like that. And with that though, that's just not enough. So you need to think, okay, do I need to go to bed earlier? That's breaking it down into a smaller habit of where you can start with. But even breaking it down with the I'm going to go to bed earlier is not enough. You need to also say, okay, what's keeping me up at night? Am I on TikTok? Am I listening to too much podcast? Am I watching TV? And any of those type of things are now the biggest habit. So now you have identified again what is stopping you from getting to this habit because you're staying up too late. Now you even break it down further from there. Okay, if it is the TV, what do I need to do to not watch TV? Maybe after 9 o'clock, you go hide your remote control. If you are on the phone too much, now maybe you are just you can put apps on there that should actually shut down your phone from a certain time. Now you're breaking down the actual smallest habit of where it starts to make that correction. And I think that's the biggest part that I learned from this book is how do you break it down so small that it just takes away all the effort of doing it. And then you go into your reward is obviously, hey, I'm starting to wake up early in the morning. You may be wanting to get things done. You're making appointments on time. All those are the rewards to doing this. Along the way, you can also have it as, hey, if I wake up every morning for this time of day for the week on Sunday, I get to go out for breakfast with my wife, my family, my kids, and we're going to have pancakes at IHOP. So make those kind of rewards as well because it gives you that fun end result to it.
So it sounds to me that the atomic aspect of this is that it's explosive, right? Because what we're really doing is analyzing all our habits because it's not one habit we need to change. It's a series of habits that might be stopping us from actually getting to where we're going.
Yes.
And then I really like what you said about the waking up early, the exercise, because that actually ties into our other podcast we talked about life work balance. When we talked about how it's so important to understand when you need to stop working and when to live a life. And I think this plugs in because sometimes you need to create a habit of not working, of turning off that phone, of making family a priority. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that.
So,
would you like an example of how I've worked with that over time?
oh, absolutely. I'd love to know about that.
So one of the things is I have two kids. They were both into sports, trying to run a business. and trying to spend the time with them. And then also, one of my biggest activities is working out and staying fit. My son would go to soccer practice, and it's almost 4 days a week. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, or in the evenings of this. And so that's quite a bit of time. By the time I would drive him there, it would be 20, 30 minutes. Then if I wanted to go and do something that hour and a half, I got another half an hour back and forth. So you may as well just stay there for the practice and try and make something work with that. So one of the things that I started doing is my workouts is happening while I'm there waiting. And I see a lot of parents do this as well. And I think what you can break this down into is I would actually get some of my runs in. You can still do push-ups while you're there. You can find, maybe if you do pull-ups, you can find those. But you break it down even smaller. Find a point where you're there at that facility where you're at and just go for a walk. Try and go for at least maybe down to a light post and come back. And if you can do that and you're feeling good, do it 5 more times. And then each time at each practice, you start building up what you're working on. And maybe the next time after you do the 5 light posts and back, you start doing some squats in there. These are all little minor things that you can do to kind of get your body physical and activities. But this, to me, is the work-life balance, because now I was able to spend time with my son while I'm going to practice. I'm still able to watch him during practice, see how he's improving, but I'm also there getting something done. And this is also, if you are trying to start a business, you can bring your laptop. There's ways to get Wi-Fi. You can start working with things there on your computer while you're waiting. You can look up, watch them, take a 5-10 minute break, and then still work on maybe your creativeness of what you're trying to do for your business.
Yeah, I like that. My only suggestion is maybe don't do that where they're actually playing a game, right? You want to actually have that quality time. And I love that story because that is a lot about life work balance.
But here's the other thing. When we would go on trips and it would be like 2 hours to the soccer game, I actually would, for the first hour, you have to get there an hour early, and then they do their warm-ups for a full hour. I would actually do some walking then. I do some running then. Normally it's around a track because it's going to be out of school, so I can do some laps around the pool, not the pool. I would do some laps around the park, things like that. And so again, it's some other ways where I'm spending the time. I love the time of the hour and a half drive I would have with him. We get some conversations in. So again, that's where those balances come in, and to make those small habits of just starting to do something.
So this is great. I think our audience can really take a lot from this. I had a mentor who had a habit of carrying a book with him. And it was a little weird. I was like, why do you always have a book? He goes, because I can't control other people. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, people tend to show up late. And so if anyone's late, I'll pull out my book and I'll read for 5 or 10 minutes. And instead of getting angry, this is an opportunity for me to read this book, get a little more knowledge in, get a little more study in of something I'm trying to learn. And he would choose books that were specific to him growing his business, him learning something new. It wasn't like I'm reading the latest detective book or something like that. It was very specific to helping him get to that next level. These are habits you can create that are really simple that can help build you to a better existence because you've made that habit. And I think that's really, really cool. So for our audience, let's break this down one more step. Let's say they're starting a new business. I know it takes hours of prep to do that. How could this habit building system help them build their business?
So one of the things he talks about in his book is, again, I'm going to go into the workout thing, but it's not specifically about that. He says if people want to start to work out and they want to go to a gym, they just don't want to go in because they're not sure how things are going to work once they get there. And he mentions in his book to drive to the facility, drive to the gym, park there, and leave if you want to. Do this every day. Do this, stay there for 10 minutes and drive home. By the time you do that 5 or 6 times a week or 2 weeks, whatever it takes, you're like, I'm here. I may as well go in and take advantage of it. And so where I go with that is the showing up to your computer, if that's what it takes, doing the research. It just takes that habit of showing up, starting to put in the time, whether it's 5 minutes that you're just researching. Let's just say you're getting into new product development that you need to figure out. Okay, do the research. There's so much you can find out on Google these days. Any other types of research, the podcasts, the books, like you mentioned earlier. Just start that minimal thing of trying to show up. And that is the very first habit that you need to work with. The rest of it will fall into place.
The point you made is really valid. And just for our audience, I want to be really transparent. We started this podcast and we're probably episode like 5 when you finally get into this. What you don't know is about 20 other episodes that never made it to light. Not because they weren't good, but because over time we evolved this podcast to be way better than we first started. And this is why showing up is half the battle. We showed up and did the podcast over and over and over again. And what we realized is, hey, we wanted to add video. We wanted to be able to have a better system and a better flow and a better blueprint so our audience can get more out of this, because we were kind of all over the place. And it was crazy how things had developed, even to the point where we started stretching ourselves a little bit when it came to doing these videos. And I think Justin can talk a little bit more about that, right, buddy?
Yeah, I was so nervous when you approached me to start doing these. One, I don't like videos. Me speaking off the cuff is one of the things that I've been practicing for years. And I even go to Toastmasters. I've been in Toastmasters for over 10 years now. And when I first joined there, it was a matter of I couldn't get my ums and ahs into control. I finally got that. Then I had to finally start doing videos, and I avoided that portion of it at all costs. And then it came down into I finally had to do Zoom just like everybody else did during COVID. And so I got past those things. But I bring this up because it has been talk about minute habits that I've changed over the 15 years to be able to get to this point to do a podcast. And so if you want to talk about atomic habits and really breaking it down, it takes a long time. It may be you can do something within 60 to 90 days as a habit per se, but it can take up to 10 years to get to that point where you are really comfortable doing something.
I totally agree. And just from a partner in this, I've told you this personally, but I'm so proud of how far you come. You people watching this are going to be in disbelief that you don't like to be kind of like, oh, he stretched it. Let me tell you, audience. Let me tell you, we've come a long way. But both of us have, because I've had to change some stuff as well. I've had to fix some things like over talking and oversharing or taking too much of the time. So both of us had to change some of our habits to accommodate each of us. And that's why you want to create these habits, because you become better. Now, I think you had some questions for me.
Yes, in our one of our last episodes, we talked about bank, and which was the blueprint, action, nurturer, and knowledge. We wanted to talk about in this how those apply atomic habits and those minor changes apply to bank. Can you help us with that a little bit? The first one is blueprint.
I think the atomic habit structure, remember those 5 things we talked about, which were cue, craving, response, reward. Our blueprint people, those people out there, I guarantee you took notes. You're like, oh, they're going to give me 5 things that I need to figure out. Now, if you took that and applied it to a systematic, hey, Monday I'm going to work on this, Tuesday I'm going to work on this, or this week I'm going to work on this month I'm going to do this one little thing and make one little change over a long period of time, you're going to see a dynamic change happen. That's how our blueprints are going to walk away with this. They're going to see this as a structure to a better life.
Now, our next one is action. I kind of see action as action people may not like this as much because action people want to see results right away.
Mm.
But I still think action people can get a lot out of this. How can they do that?
Action people love results and are super competitive. Action people will find this super valuable because what they're going to do, they're going to make habits that are specific for them to win. They're going to get up earlier. They're going to be the first one there. That showing up thing, they are the ones who are hungry, always being there 5-10 minutes before everyone else because they're competitive. They're going to go, how can I be better? How can I make this give me the edge? Action people can take this and run super far with this. Now, caution to action people. You still have to do this every day. This is not a one-time fix.
Just like any habit.
Just like any habit.
So the next one's nurturers. And I feel like nurturers almost want to try and help other people with their small habits. Is that accurate on this? Or how would nurturers play into atomic habits?
I think this is super important for nurturers. Speaking to someone myself, is nurturers are great at caring about everybody else. They do a horrible job about caring for themselves. And this is where having atomic habits, that life work balance we talked about, where you focus on things that you can do better, Here's the reality. If you're healthier, if you're wealthier, you can help more people. So these atomic habits, you need to make habits that are going to be somewhat selfish for you to make sure you have the energy and you have the funds to help the community you want to grow. That's how a nurture can get the most out of this. And it's going to sound crazy because the nurture's like, but I don't want to do that. I want to help my community. You want to help your community? The best thing to do is help yourself first, because you are the reason that community exists. And if you are outside of that picture, that community will probably crumble. So we need you to be on top of your game. That's how atomic habits can help you succeed.
As knowledge, I feel like this one like really falls into play with me. It's the ability to kind of take all this information and see how I can make myself better. Is that accurate for this?
Yeah, knowledge people saw that we were talking about a book and they were already invested in this podcast the minute we said we're going to talk about a book. Knowledge people love absorbing information. How a knowledge person can take this to the next level, like you said, you found that one thing you struggled with. Let's take video, for example, and you applied it. The one thing knowledge people have to do is not just collect that information, but actually apply it to their life to make that change, to see that result. So that's the one thing I would encourage them is just don't forget to actually apply that knowledge, because you absorbed it all. You were loving this. I guarantee you, you're going to probably be the one of those people going get that book on Amazon or getting that book at the local library, and you're going to read it once, twice, 3 times to get every little bit of information out of it. But then you need to apply it. Speaking of someone getting it, where can they find this book?
Audio book is on Amazon or audible.com, and or you can buy the book on Amazon.
Excellent. And I'm sure local libraries carry it. And then you could always probably Google search for where the book might be as well, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Well, to all our listeners out there, I cannot tell you how valuable this book is going to be to you. You know, anytime I come across someone who has more information than me, I think it's super important to figure out that information, capture it, and then apply it to my life. Now, that is my action personality talking there, because I want to make myself better, right? But I think for you, there's some nuggets here you can really take away and help you with whatever thing you're struggling with. So I want to really encourage you to get greedy for yourself, for self-improvement, to help you get to that next level. Because when you are doing better, your business is going to do better. And when your business is doing better, you're going to make more money, which is a circular effect. So everything just gets better and better. So please go check out this book, go find it online. And then we'd love to know in the comment section below, of course, how this book and this podcast affected you. Well, thanks for listening. We're so happy you tuned in. Don't forget, of course, to like our video, comment, share, and of course, hit that subscribe button.